I saw the shadow come up behind me, and he grabbed me from behind, and he put a knife pressing at my throat.
The more I pulled, it felt like the tighter it was getting on me. The only way you're gonna get loose is to rip your hand off, and I go, well, I don't know if I can do that.
He went from guilt, I'm sorry, look, to I'm gonna kill you.
What's gonna happen? Am I gonna be raped? Am I gonna be killed? Is this it? I was 17 years old, and I had just graduated from high school. My senior year of high school, I was a homecoming queen. It was such just a great life to feel like your whole world is in front of you. I was getting ready to go away to college in the fall, and I was working at a shopping mall to pay for my upcoming college expenses. It was 6:30 on a Saturday evening, and I had gotten off of work early to go to a graduation party. So I was leaving my job, and I was walking across the parking lot, and I love music. I was carrying a CD in my hand, and I was singing out loud to myself. And nobody was around until I stopped in my tracks, and this fleeting chill ran up my spine, and I turn around, and there's a guy following me about 10 feet behind. This maybe 50-year-old white man wearing a gray t-shirt, green work pants, thick glasses, messed up hair. He definitely had that creepy vibe about him. All of my internal alarms were going off, but I actually just felt embarrassed that this person had heard me singing, and I could feel my cheeks turn bright red, and I didn't think anything of it. I walked to my car, I put the key into the lock, and then all of a sudden I saw the shadow come up behind me, and he grabbed me from behind, and he put a knife pressing at my throat. I thought that this was just a robbery at first, so I did glance around. My eyes were darting around the parking lot. Nobody was around, so there was no one to scream to. And with this knife at your throat, you don't know what to do. Your whole body just freezes in fear. I offered him any money in my wallet. I said, take my wallet, take whatever you want. And he said, it's not your money that I want. And that line made me realize that this was a very serious situation. He tried to force me into my car, but the console that separated the passenger and the driver's seat, he wasn't able to get me over the seat, so he said, this isn't gonna work, he muttered. And so he grabbed me out of the car, still with the knife to my throat, and forced me into his car, which was parked just feet from my car, just a mere couple feet. And I just thought to myself, had he been watching me? Had he been stalking me? Because his car was parked so close to mine that this feeling of dread just kind of overcame me. In the car, he had grabbed both of my wrists and took them behind my back and used zip ties to restrain my arms behind my back. And then I saw him take these Band-Aids and peel off the white strips and place it on my eyes, 2 of them, one horizontal and one vertically in the shape of a cross, and then put sunglasses over my eyes to conceal the Band-Aids. And he was so practiced. I knew that he had done this before. It was just so methodical and practiced that in my heart of hearts, I knew that this was not his first time doing this.
Well, I got back from church that Sunday morning, and I told my wife after we had breakfast, I said, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start combining. I says, we've got a couple nice days, and I want to try and get as much of my soybeans done as I can. I try and do all my own crops myself. So I take off out of the house, and I go over and I head over to the field with the combine. It's very dangerous. There's a lot of moving parts on it. There isn't a part on that machine that is really to be really safe. I mean, because a lot of the parts on the combine, there's no shields on them, because the combine is a piece of equipment that you can't put all the covers and shields on because you have to see some of the machine actually working. I combined one field and I got 5 acres done, and then I started down to another field. And when I was coming down to the other field, I heard this loud noise on the machine, and it started making a lot of rattling and banging. I go, wow, that's not good. So I shut the machine down. This pulley was shot, the bearing had gone out. I shut the machine down already. I go, well, I think I got another one. I'll walk back to it's about 3/4 of a mile to where my farm is, where the house is and where my garage is. And I fired it up. I go, I better make sure everything's working all right on this machine. After I got the belt back on it and everything, I got it running. I got the machine running full tilt. I mean, I don't know what the RPMs was on, but it was running rather fast. So I'm walking around the machine. I go, well, everything looks like it's working okay. So, well, maybe I can start combining again. I get back up in the combine, and I start it all back up. The header and everything, make sure everything's working all right. Well, I go to let the header down. I go, oh, darn it, I didn't take the header lock off. The lock holds the header up so that when if you're working on it, it won't come down on top of you. It's a safety lock. The machine was running, and like a fool, I didn't go back up and turn it off. I go, well, it'll only take a millisecond. I'm not going to walk back up into the combine now. I'm in a hurry, So I reached through there rather than turn the machine off, and I grabbed a hold of the header lock, and I raised it up, and just as I got it raised up and got it hooked into place, I felt a quick tug on my arm. I go, wow. And the next thing I know, my hand's all wrapped around this shaft.
I kind of was doing my normal morning routine. I was just taking a shower and my bath and had gotten dressed and I was waiting for a TV show to come on. I was sitting there and the doorbell rang. I got up and went to the door, opened the door, and there was a young man standing there. He looked at me and he actually asked me, "Do you remember who I am?" And I was pretending that I did, and I was like, "Oh yes, I remember who you are." I remembered who he was when he mentioned a girl's name. I remember he was sweating profusely. He said that he needed a glass of water, and I turned around to go to the kitchen, and he followed me right in the house. And I told him right off the bat, I said, "My mother's not here right now. She'll be home shortly, and you can't stay, but I'll get you the water." He was telling me about his grandmother, who he wanted to go see and who he wanted to live with, and she was sick, and so I was leaning on the side of some sympathy. He asked me for if there was any way that I could get him some money. And I told him that there was no money at the house. He looked at me and he said he understood and that he was going to try and speak with some other friends and see if he could get some money up to go to California. The end of our conversation, he pointed toward his hand and he said he had something in it. I asked him if he wanted a needle and he said no. Do you have anything sharper? I proceeded to go into the kitchen and I grabbed the biggest knife in the drawer, and he put the knife in his hand and he just cut into his hand, and blood started dripping down from his hand onto the kitchen table. I told him, I said, "You have to get over the kitchen sink." And in my mind I was thinking, "You are nuts." I said, "Stephen, give me the knife, let me clean it up and put it up." And he turned around and he just glared at me and gave me the coldest glare I've ever seen in my life. He didn't say anything to me. He came towards me with the knife, and he kept coming towards me, and somehow I tripped and I was on the floor at that time. He proceeded to kneel down over top of me and started stabbing me in my chest.
So he asked me what my name was, and I made up a name. I said, Nancy, what's yours? And he just snapped, it doesn't matter what my name is, and he just kept driving with his eyes to the front. Every time that I tried to talk to him, saying, you have to let me go, all these things that I kept saying to him, my parents are gonna be looking for me, no response, no reaction. And when you think of like a psychopath, that's what I think of, is somebody like that. No expression, no emotion, totally stoic. I think that is really what frightened me the most, is seeing him have no emotion in this whole experience. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know how far we were going. All these questions in my mind racing. The not knowing, I think, was the hardest part of it. That's when I lost it, and I started to sob, and through these tears, I think it actually loosened the Band-Aids a little bit. He didn't know that I could see, but as we were driving, I could see down to either side, down to the left and down to the right, but he didn't know that. And I'm seeing all these cars zoom by, and here I am completely helpless, completely powerless, thinking, should I try and, mouth for help as these people are driving by? But I felt like there was really nothing that I could do. I kept thinking to myself, if I get out of this situation alive, he's not getting away with it. And so I remembered all these details of the route that we were going, and details about his face, the car, the beaded seat cushion, the city sticker, the broken antenna, all these things that I could catalog in my head. And for me, that was a way that I was able to regain power. As we were driving, I was able to wriggle my hands out of the restraints. Even though these plastic zip ties were so tight, I was able to wriggle my hands free. And I kept him behind my back and surveyed the situation. And I had seen that he took the knife, put it into the cardboard sheath, kept it at his side. The seatbelt was on me, the door was locked. And I thought to myself, even if I was able to roll out of the car, if I broke an arm, if I broke a leg, at least I was out and at least I was free. I just took this giant deep breath and tried to undo the seatbelt and get to the door, but he was too fast. Slams on the brakes, grabs the knife, puts it to my face, and says, "Try that again, bitch, and your face won't be so pretty anymore."
I could still see my hand, but the shaft was turning. And the pressure that was pulling on my arm was unbelievable. It was excruciating pain. The pressure was, I didn't think I was going to be able to take the pressure. I looked down, my hand was all wrapped around the shaft, and my clothes at the same time, I had coveralls on. This one-piece suit I had was no longer a one-piece suit anymore. It was all wrapped around the shaft. I was completely exposed except for where the cloth that was wrapped around the shaft was wrapped around my waist, pulling me in, squeezing the life out of me like a tourniquet. And I could feel my leg starting to get real hot, and I looked down at my leg, and the shaft was starting to burn into my skin on my leg. And it was burning on the one side, and then I could feel it starting to pull on the other side, and I could feel it, the shaft was getting hot. I mean, it was burning my skin off. It was literally tearing the skin off my leg and burning. I'm getting pulled in tighter and tighter. The more I pulled, it felt like the tighter it was getting on me. And I couldn't stand the pain. I go, "God help me." I says, "I don't know how much more of this pain I can take." And I'm looking down, I'm assessing the value of my hand. I'm looking at my hand, I go, "Pat, that hand, the only way you're gonna get loose is to rip your hand off." And I go, "I don't know if I can do that." And I started to feel a little bit sick, and I just told myself, "Pat, This isn't the time to get sick now. We got to get out of here.
I was fearing for my life. I really was. I didn't know why this was going on, and I was scared. I wanted him off of me, and I just kept thinking that I was gonna die. He went from blank stares to a remorse, guilt, I'm sorry look, to I'm gonna kill you. I said, Stephen, why are you doing this? And as he was taking the knife out of my chest, he said, shut up, you stupid bitch. He then proceeded to stab me one more time, and the knife went all the way into my chest. He took the knife out of my chest, and there was a coldness within my body. There was no pain. There was just a coldness. I continued to fight with him, even after he stabbed me in the chest. I put my arms up and just to protect myself as much as I could. And he just repeatedly just came after me over and over again. I struggled to get up on the counter. He was very close behind me. I pushed the 9 and the 1 on the phone, and as soon as I got the 1 in, he grabbed the receiver of the phone from me, yanked it out of the phone itself, and he sliced my throat with a butcher knife.
As we were driving down the expressway, getting farther and farther away from the mall, farther and farther away from any area that I knew, that dread started to build and build. We're driving down the expressway, and I see him start to pull off. When he removes the zip ties that were binding my wrists behind my back, all these questions in my mind. Should I try and run? I don't know where I am. There's nobody around. I thought maybe I should try and get out of the car and try and run for help. And I had this image of him chasing me down and cutting my throat in the woods. And so I just kept listening to my instinct, and my instinct told me to stay in the car. I can hear this rustling in the back, and he asked me what dress size I was. So weird, so confusing, but I remember my stomach just dropped, thinking, what is going on? Heard him rustling in the back, pulls out this evening gown, and he tells me to take off my clothes. Every single piece of clothing that I took off just felt like, just making me more and more scared, more and more helpless. He helps me put on this evening gown and kind of wriggles it down, and it's this long dress, almost like a prom dress, and he takes the zipper and zips it up the side, and it fit like a glove. How did he know exactly what size I was? And that was so scary and so creepy. And then this other shirt was put on me, this red satin shirt, and I just felt like I was being dressed up just like a doll. And these questions of what's gonna happen? Am I gonna be raped? Am I gonna be killed? Is this it?
By this time, it's been at least probably 5 minutes, and this shaft's pulling and pulling and pulling. And I go, I'm going to run out of energy if I don't get out of here soon. I have only one option. I got to rip my hand off. So I just kept pulling and pulling as hard as I could, and all of a sudden, my hand just pulled right off my body, and I could feel it sliding right off the end of my bones, the bones of my arm. And when it slid off the end, it was like a suction sound, and I could feel the cold. It felt cold when it was running over the ends of the bone. And I looked down, and all I had left is I had two bones that used to hold my hand. And I see my hand flying around on this shaft, and I go, God, says, I've lost my hand. I go, well, that's not the biggest problem I've got now. I got to get out of here. My body is still stuck to this shaft because all the clothes that I had on, I had, full coveralls on. They were all wrapped around my waist. My legs were exposed. I had nothing on the top of me. All I had left on was a hat, shoes, and socks, and clothes wrapped around my waist. It was pulling me into the shaft, which was spinning at least 1,800 RPMs or more. I'm going to lose my life if I don't get loose, because, this thing is squeezing the life out of me. I can't even hardly breathe anymore. I was stuck, and I kept twisting my arm back and forth, trying to get some leverage. I couldn't get any leverage. And my hand was just picked clean, just like a chicken bone. If you went out and you got some chicken wings, that's what it looked like. All it was just the two bones. They weren't broken. They were all still there. But I couldn't get my arm to move enough to get loose. So I go, wow, maybe if I reach over, maybe if I break those bones off. So I reached over and with my other hand, and I twisted as hard as I could, trying to break those bones. All I felt was severe, excruciating pain in my elbow. I go, I can't do that. That's too much. I can't do that. There's got to be a better way of getting out of here.
I remember how cold it was, just the steel just going over my skin, just breaking my neck wide open. He had the receiver, and I thought that, okay, he's got the receiver in one hand, he's got the knife in the other hand. I might have a chance to try to get the knife away from him. I ended up grabbing the blade of the knife, and he had the handle, and he yanked the handle back, and it severed all the tendons in my fingers. But I just remember it didn't hurt again. It just felt real cold and just real, almost a wet feeling. I remember the sound of the knife hitting the floor, and shortly after the knife hit the floor, my knees buckled, and I hit the floor, and I looked up, and he was standing on top of me. He proceeded to kick me in my stomach, and he kicked me in my head, and I passed out.
So I'm sitting in the passenger seat of the car, wearing all these layers of these satin clothing, feeling just like a rag doll. And I heard him unzip his pants. He just grabs me even closer to him as he grabs my hand and puts it on him. To be forced to do something like that against your will, and to feel like all you were there for was just a thing, an object, was traumatizing. My eyes were shut so tight, but I know that there was a couple of tears that had fallen, and after he had finished, he cleaned himself off with this handkerchief, and he took it and he wiped the tears with that off my face, and it was just so repulsive. And with that same handkerchief, he wiped his fingerprints off my keys. And all these feelings are going through me, and I knew that he had done this before, and every cell in my body just felt like, I want to make sure that this guy gets brought to justice. And that's what kept me going through this, is just knowing that I was going to do everything I could to get this guy to pay for what he did. he pulls back onto the expressway, and it takes a good solid few minutes for me to realize that we're actually heading back towards town. It's a sense of relief mixed with dread and confusion because I don't know if we're headed back. I don't know if I'm home free and safe. I have no idea.
I gotta push as hard as I can. Maybe I can stop this belt from turning this machine over, this part that's pulling me in tighter and tighter, because if I don't do something pretty soon, I'm either gonna bleed to death or this thing's it's just gonna pull me in and squeeze the life out of me so I can't breathe anymore. So I started pulling as hard as I possibly could, and I took my hand and I put it over my bicep, and I started pulling and pulling and pulling, and I pushed my head down the machine. I finally used my head for more than just a hat rack. And I pushed as hard as I could with my head and the arm, what was left of my arm, and I had my elbow up against it because even though it was all raw, I figured whatever leverage I could get, it's gonna do me the best to get out of here. I pushed as hard as I could, and I go, I don't think I'm gonna make it. I go, God help me, and I said, God help me again. And just as I said that, I could felt like I had hands pulling on both of my shoulders. I couldn't turn around and see if there was anybody there or not, but I know that there was someone there because I could feel the pressure pulling me out as I was getting pulled in. All of a sudden, the shaft started slowing down, and I could smell a belt burning. I go, wow, that smells like rubber burning. And I go, wow, I think I got a chance. I think I'm slowing this machine down.
I came to and I heard in the background, somewhere in a far distance, it sounded like a door had shut. I didn't know if he had come back through the house to finish what he had started or not. I looked around and there was blood everywhere. I could see the bloody knife on the floor very near me, and I was just looking around and I didn't know how I was gonna get out of the spot that I was in. I was stuck in my own blood. I didn't know how much blood I had lost, but I knew that I had to find a way out if I was gonna live. I was just playing over and over, get out of the house. And I passed out again. I just woke up and I was in the hallway. I do not know how I got to the hallway. I had turned to my right and there was a mirror from the floor to the ceiling. And I remember I bumped into the mirror. And I don't recognize myself. I have just tons and tons of blood all over me. My hair is just thick and covered in blood. My hands, my whole body, my white nightgown is now red. And I remember I reached up with my hand and I put it into my neck. And I was just feeling my neck. And my hand was inside my neck. And I was just looking at myself. And it was a dream. It felt like it was a dream. I didn't think I had that much time left. I just saw the front door and I had to figure out a way to get to it. And I passed out.
Even as I realize the direction that we're going, I still have no idea. Am I going to be safe? Am I going to make it out? Is this okay? What's happening? He finally drives back, not to the mall that he picked me up from, but from an adjacent outdoor shopping plaza. And he pulls into a parking garage and slowly starts to drive up the kind of circle that rounds about up to the top floor. He takes the handkerchief, he grabs me out of the car, opens the door to the stairwell with the handkerchief and shoves me inside, and he orders me to count to 100. And of course I wasn't gonna do that. I tried whatever I could to hurry up and get my arms free, my eyes free to try and catch his license plate, but the car drove off too fast. So in the stairwell, I remember just walking down the stairs feeling everything was moving in slow motion, and I wanted to get mall security to drive me back to my car so I could try and get help. I walked over to this man who was doing paperwork, and he was looking down, and when he looked up, his face, his emotions were pretty apparent. His face just fell and said, I'm calling the police. And I knew that I was a mess. My clothes were a mess. Mascara was all over my face. You could tell that I had been crying. My arms were red and lacerated from where my hands were bound behind my back. So I knew that he knew something was wrong. He says, well, I need to ask you a question that I ask all the victims that come in here. After I told him my story, he said, are you lying? He said, are you in an abusive relationship? Does your boyfriend hit you? Because sometimes girls get themselves into situations. Didn't believe me.
I'm still stuck in there for quite some time. I'm figuring probably by now it seemed like an eternity, but it's probably only maybe about 15 minutes. And this shaft's still turning and it's pulling me in tighter. And I'm pushing as hard as I could. And finally, I could smell the belt burning, and all I could see was just blue smoke. My eyes actually started to feel like they're starting burning. All of a sudden, it just released. I actually stopped. I burned off the belt. I stopped that shaft from turning. I wasn't loose yet. The shaft wasn't turning, so I reached over and I grabbed this 20-inch pulley and I started turning it backwards. So I got it turned enough so I could start pulling my clothes out of there. And I finally got myself loose from the shaft. And this machine's still running full tilt. It was full throttle all the way. And then I went up and I shut the machine off. I really felt like I felt like a happy man, like the happiest man in the world. I could not believe that I had burned off a belt on a machine and stopped the shaft from actually turning with all that force with just my own little body. I can't believe I walked away from that. I started back out of the combine. I started down the steps. It's a little hard when you got one hand trying to pull yourself in and up out of this, because this thing's off the ground probably about 6 feet. And then when I came back down, I go, wow, I want my hand back. Maybe they can put it back on. It doesn't look very good, but maybe they can save it. I don't know. So I started cutting my hand out with these pair of wire cutters, and I finally got my hand loose, and I went back up in the combine. I go, oh, I got to get something to wrap around my arm. If I do get rescued, I don't want to be completely naked, so I took the sweatshirt and I wrapped it around my center section. I tied it off the best I could with the one hand, and I held the bones down there to pull it up tight. I'm looking at myself, boy, I'm a sorry-looking sight. I know you've seen Freddy Krueger before. I said, but I think I look worse than Freddy does right now. I got blood all over me. I have no clothes on. I got a hat and a sweatshirt and socks and shoes. Starting to feel lightheaded and weak, and I was getting really nauseous. I go, well, I think I better get out of here as fast as I can. I knew I couldn't run because I felt too weak to run, but I knew if I walked real fast, I was gonna find help. One way or another, somebody was gonna find me.
I woke up and I see the door, and I'm reaching out to get the door open. Finally, I kind of slithered like a snake out of the door, the first door, and I hit concrete. It was so cold. I remember it being so cold. There was nobody around. It was deadly quiet. It was just still. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, someone to help me. I just kept calling out, just help me. I saw an outline of a person come halfway across the street, and it was a man, and I remember he stopped at the edge of the street, and he turned around, and he went back to his house. The next thing I know, he came halfway across the street, and then his mother was standing there, and she was calling 911. I remember them telling me, Trisha, you're gonna be okay, you're gonna be okay. We have help coming for you. The doctor said you had been stabbed 14 times in all, and we did 8-hour open heart surgery on you to repair your heart, and you're lucky to be alive. It was one thing to get through the physical attack and the healing process of the physical wounds, but it was a whole nother struggle to get through. He had taken on a new identity. He was a new person. He wasn't anybody that I knew, and he was out there. 12 years later, I got a call from a detective saying that Stephen confessed to stabbing me. He was in prison, and he confessed to what he had done, and we were going to bring him back, and he was going to be tried for attempted murder. I'm so relieved. It's an overwhelming relief to know that I don't have to fear. I don't have to be paranoid. That there's going to be bars between him and I, and hopefully for a really long time.
I'm walking down the road, and all of a sudden I look down, and there's the dog. There's my fearless dog. Dog comes running, and she's walking down the side of the road, looking at me like, the dog. I could tell the dog knew that there was something wrong with me. It was helping me to safety, I thought, probably, but I feel a little more comfortable. At least the dog knows I'm alive. So I'm walking down the road, and I get about a half a mile, and I look down, and I see my cousin out in the yard. He's out there burning papers or trash or something, and I look over at him, he's just staring at me, Here, this guy's walking down the road, and I was a really sorry-looking sight. It's something you really didn't want to see. He was in shock. And the guy is a fire chief for Union Springs Fire Department, so this guy sees stuff like this all the time, but he doesn't see a guy walking down the road, holding his hand in his hand with no clothes on, with a sweatshirt and a hat on. And I go, Garrett, I need help. And he comes running up to me, and he says, Pat, sit down. And he just takes off, and he turns around. I go, oh, he's going to leave me here. He takes off running, and he turns around, and he gets to his house, and he turns around. I'm right there. He says, Pat, I told you to sit down. I says, Garrett, I'm holding up my arm with the two bones. I says, you know what, Garrett, I've been left alone too long already. I said, I need help now. And I was laying there on the ground before they airlifted me out. They were taking my pulse and stuff, and they said, well, we don't have any vital signs on him. And my brother goes, he says, well, maybe he's already dead and just doesn't want to die, and everybody starts laughing. He says, well, we got to try and get some vital signs. Well, I'd lost so much blood that they couldn't get any vital signs. They cut it about halfway down to my wrist. Between my elbow and to my wrist, I'm about halfway. So I got about 4.5 inches from my elbow out. But whatever I got, I'm happy with. I'm happy to be alive. I survived because I'm not ready to go yet. And the only reason why I think I know that I made it because I had, help from the other side. I really had help from it because I had hands pulling me out of that machine, because there's no way anybody could possibly burn a belt off on a machine like that without having help. They say you have guardian angels. I think I have a few of them watching over me.
I stood up out of my chair at the police station, clenched my fists, and I walked out of there. We put so much pressure on the police station to take this seriously that they finally put 2 new detectives on the case. And the 2 new detectives said to me, "Angela, we have kids of our own. We're gonna do everything we can to catch this guy." So I did a sketch of his face, and that's actually how they caught him. They had it faxed over to the police stations, and someone recognized him. At the end, it took 4 years for my case to come to trial, but it was really empowering to be able to be up on that stand and look at him and say, "This is what he did to me." And to look at him in court, and he would just stare, this icy stare at me. But it really helped me regain some type of power in my own life to be able to take it through the criminal justice system. And I wouldn't wish that pain and stress upon anybody, but I wouldn't take the experience back. And I feel like we can't choose what happens to us in life, but we can choose our response. I survived because I listened to my instincts. I think I heard that little voice inside my head that told me to stay in the car, that would help me through the situation. And I don't know if it's faith, I don't know what it was, but it was that instinct that I think kept me alive.
I could see my body being mutilated in front of me, and I could see the blood, and I could see the inside of my body.
We were sucked under the ice so quickly that neither one of us had really time to think or say anything.
I could hear the flesh tearing, and I couldn't feel any pain, but the knife was cutting my throat.
I'm sitting there and I am praying. At this point, I'm praying. I have 3 kids. I have to live. It's not an option to die. Robbie was really caring. He was funny. He was enthusiastic. He was very nice, sometimes overly nice. There was never any arguments or any kind of jealousy or anything like that. Robbie was great with the kids, and he would just end up spending time around me and the kids at our apartment. I knew that I had classwork to do for the next day, so I kind of just had played some cards with him to entertain him, and then I said that I needed to finish my homework, and he went back to the bedroom, and I was in the living room. Robbie comes out from the bedroom, and he asked me why I had poisoned him with battery acid. I looked at him and I said, "What are you talking about?" He proceeded to walk towards the kitchen area, and he picked up the meat cleaver from the butcher block. He stood in front of me and asked me again why I had poisoned him with battery acid. He just looked like the devil. His eyes were dark. They were shallow. They looked like there was nothing behind them. You could tell he was very angry, and he just didn't even look human at that point. I realize that this is a very serious situation, and I am scared. I'm just trying to reassure him that I don't feel that he has been harmed in any way, and that if he does feel that if he's been harmed, that he should call 911 and just put the meat cleaver down so that nobody gets hurt unnecessarily. He placed the meat cleaver against my neck, and he told me that if I didn't drink the gin, that he would chop my neck off. I opened my mouth to try and swallow the gin. I don't drink, so my gag reflex kicked in, and I was automatically spitting it back out. That irritated him, thinking that there was battery acid in it, so he took a swing with the meat cleaver. He was swinging for my face, and at that point I raised my left hand to protect my face, and he chopped through my left hand with the meat cleaver.
My father had always wanted to spend some time in northern Alaska, and so I thought it was a perfect opportunity for us to spend some time together and plan the trip.
The time of the year that Blake selected was in the month of June. We assumed by that time that the snow would be gone, the ice melted, etc., and we would see other people on the river.
Wasn't the best time of year to be floating the river because the river was going to be a little bit higher, but my wife was at home pregnant and was due in August, and so I didn't want to push things into July or even early August for that matter.
We passed over a bear and a wolf, and he pointed those out to me, and when we got and landed on the bank, he said, "You can't believe how many bear tracks there are along here."
We loaded up the raft and started floating down the river, taking in the beauty and scenery of what northern Alaska had to offer at that time. As we started floating down the river, we realized that there was still quite a bit of ice. However, it was always on one side of the river. Eventually, it got to where there was ice on either side of the river. We came to a bend in the channel.
We were pretty quickly in a channel no more than 10 feet wide. Ice was clear across in front of us. There wasn't any way to stop because the river was channeled very swiftly at that point.
There was very little time for us to do or think about anything. The front of the raft hit at an angle the ice that was covering the river.
The river just took us up along the ice bank and flipped us over, and we went under the ice at that point.
I was studying chemical engineering, and I was a junior. I lived with 2 female roommates. They were my 2 best girlfriends from high school. I unlocked my front door, and I walked in, and I had groceries in my hands, so I put them down. I went to close the door, and all of a sudden, somebody came up from behind me. He grabbed me with one arm across my shoulders and had a knife to my throat. The other hand covered my eyes. I'd been thinking about my brother because I was supposed to have studied with him that day. So I was thinking, oh, this must just be a joke. He must just be messing with me. But then the person spoke. They had a knife to my throat and they said, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm just here for the money. There was a mirror, a decorative mirror in front of me, and for just 1 second I did see that there was somebody behind me, that he was about a little bit taller than I am. He just said that I'd come home too early and that he really just didn't think that anybody would be in the house. I just wanted to give him the money, and I just really believed that he would leave if I did. He took my wallet and then he put it down. He asked me which room was mine, and I told him which one. He wanted to walk me back there, so I directed him. When we got into the room, he bound my hands. He put a sock in my mouth, and while he was doing that, he told me that he just wanted to leave me tied up for my roommates to find, and that he would just take the money and leave. I believed him. And then he starts to take my clothes off.
There's blood squirting everywhere. Obviously, it had chopped through veins, so it's squirting across my living room. He placed the meat cleaver back against my neck and held it there. He proceeded to tell me that if I cried, or if I screamed, or if I yelled, that he would then chop off my neck. We were at a standoff for about 45 minutes. After he had sliced through my hand, I continued to try and talk him down. He was irrational and enraged with fury. And the whole time, he would have the meat cleaver placed against my neck. I said something that must have really angered him. He removed the meat cleaver from my neck, and he swung, and I raised my left arm in defense, and he then chopped through my left elbow. I could see my body being mutilated in front of me, and I could see the blood, and I could see the inside of my body. I could see bones, I could see tendons, but I couldn't really feel it. I'm sitting there and I am praying. At this point, I'm praying. I have 3 kids. I have to live. It's not an option to die.
There was a gap between the ice and the water at that point, and we could actually yell at each other. And Blake yelled at me, "Oh, Dad, I'm sorry," and that's about all the time that there was. I reached up and tried to grab the top of the ice and keep from going under, and was eventually just sucked under.
There was no air pocket to breathe, and so my father and I were trying to rise to the surface and ended up with several abrasions and scrapes at the top of our head.
We had no gap between the water and the ice bank above us, so from then on it was just how long you can hold your breath.
We were so close to death at the time, and we both knew it and realized it. And it seems like you relive a lot of your life in a matter of seconds and start thinking about all those things that you love and cherish that you're certainly worried about losing at the time. It certainly got to the point where I felt like I was going to either take in a big breath of water or just pass out from holding my breath.
He tells me that he's gonna leave me naked for my roommates to find, and I'm thinking, I'm embarrassed. But at this point, I'm still thinking that everything's gonna be okay. I laid myself down on the bed and was going along with what he had requested of me. And as I was laying there, I was thinking that I had done what he had said and that he would leave. But then all of a sudden he was on top of me. And he was raping me. While he was raping me, he asked me if I had a boyfriend. I couldn't respond to his questions. I was gagged. I nodded my head yes. He asked me if he was better than my boyfriend, if he was bigger. He asked me if I was enjoying it. I sort of disassociated from my body. I kind of felt apart from it, as though I were almost watching it happen rather than experiencing it. I really just checked out. I thought about who would hear me if I would scream, and I knew my neighbor worked from home. And so I thought if I screamed, maybe he would hear me. Even though I was gagged, I screamed as loud as I could through the gag. And he said to me, "If you scream again, I'll kill you."
He walked into the kitchen and he comes back over with boiling water and he begins to pour it down my throat. He would tell me, like, this battery acid is gonna taste really great, isn't it? And how did you manage to get it into the water coming out the faucet? He thought I wasn't drinking it because he thought the tap water was battery acid. So he began to burn me with cigarettes, and he would put cigarettes out on my face and on my arms. As the night progressed, he just became more and more agitated. He was like hopping around like he was like a boxer, you know, just really aggressive. At one point, he had thought that maybe I had hid something, I don't know, in my personal area. So he proceeded to pull down my pants and he ripped off my underwear. And it was my time of the month, and so I had a tampon in. So he pulled my tampon out and shoved that in my mouth. At no point did I feel that I was going to plead with him. I tried logic, but I was not going to degrade myself and plead or beg. I wasn't going to cry. I felt like if me talking to him rationally wasn't going to work, then begging would just give him greater satisfaction. At that point, I said, please, Robbie, I have kids. This has got to stop. That really just pissed him off, and the next thing I knew, the meat cleaver was flying, and he chopped my upper arm in half. That's when I realized I've got to come up with an idea to get out of here or I'm going to die.
place for us to get any air, and we were being pushed along by the current, and I probably held my breath for a minute, but I felt like my lungs were about had it. Yes, I thought this was it. Blake managed, he was over to my right, and he managed to scramble up on top of some ice and get out and get up on the bank.
I pulled myself out of the water and immediately started looking for my father, and eventually saw his head bobbing above the water.
Pretty soon I managed to run into a place where I could grab a rock and stop. I swam over to him, and he got a branch, and there was a little bit of a bank there, and he got a branch and stuck it out to me and pulled me up out of the water.
As we were holding each other, we were both somewhat emotional. It was very difficult for me, especially knowing that I had left behind an infant son, a wife that was pregnant, and really had almost died, had almost drowned. We weren't expected really for almost a week. At that time of year, there's really no food in northern Alaska. The berries haven't come out yet. There was no fish. We're not going to be able to get to our raft. We need to figure out what in the world we were going to do now.
The rape just seemed to last for so long. It just seemed like it wasn't going to end. And then he had me lay down on my stomach, and he sort of straddled me, and I felt the knife to my throat again. He asked me, "Are you going to tell anyone? Are you going to tell anybody?" And I, of course, said no. Then I felt the knife start to saw into my neck. I could hear the flesh tearing, and I couldn't feel any pain, but the knife was cutting my throat. He cut basically from ear to ear. He went across my neck twice with the knife. I felt it and I heard it, but in my mind, I couldn't feel it, and in my mind I just couldn't believe it, that was really actually happening. I felt him get up, and then I heard him walk out of the room, and I heard the door close, and I was relieved that he was gone. Then I felt a warmth on my chest, felt the liquid flowing down my chest, and there was blood, and I realized that I could die. I was thinking that if he had gotten my carotid artery, that I would have 4 minutes before I had brain damage, and that I needed to get out of that house.
He had walked into the kitchen and turned his back, and I just got up and ran. I maneuvered towards the front door, and I unlocked the door and went into the apartment hallway. As I knocked on the door across the hall, I just said, "Help, he's trying to kill me. He has a meat cleaver I'm bleeding. Please call the police. I could feel him come behind me with the meat cleaver, and every time I would say something or knock, I could feel a bang in my skull. And at that point, I put my hand kind of, like my right hand, not thinking behind my head, and he then chopped my right hand twice, and so I didn't have any hands at this point. I just methodically went from door to door, just praying, like, please somebody open the door. Please, just help me. He's gonna kill me. I'm gonna die out here. I didn't scream. I never yelled. I just kind of knocked and spoke loudly and clearly. I knew that I had lost so much blood at this point that it was so important for me to remain calm and to keep my heart rate down. Every step that I take, he's right behind me, and I could just feel him continually chopping at me. He was chopping my skull and my back, just trying to kill me. He wasn't trying to stop me at that point. He was trying to kill me.
I just took an inventory of everything that I had on me after we got out of the river and realized that I had the lighter in my pocket, and I started a fire and started to gather wood for the night.
He gathered up branches and put them across kind of an area by the side of the bank of this open area, and for a little shelter. We were very concerned about bears.
It was a difficult decision to make, and of course my father really didn't agree with it, but I felt like it was the best thing for us. We were really high in a river valley which was quite small and steep, and didn't feel like it was going to be easy for anyone to spot us where we were.
He took the lighter with him and then left about 10:30 that Saturday morning, and left even though I didn't want him to go.
Shortly after I started the hike, probably within an hour or so, I ran into a black bear. He was a couple hundred yards away from me, easily the biggest black bear I'd ever seen. I crouched down and made my way over to a tree and got behind this tree and actually hid, and luckily I was downwind of the bear. I continued to travel on, and I'd come up out of a little drainage area, and I came across a grizzly bear. Luckily, it was far enough away that he didn't see me, but it was probably only 50 yards or so away. And I was able to get back down into that drainage area and make my way around him. There were several small creeks, which at that time of year had become more small rivers because of the melt. And they were pretty full, and so I had to swim through several of those. And eventually, after one of those, it was getting dark enough and cool enough that I decided to stop and built a fire and laid down to sleep for the night. I started to think about my dad and what might be going on with him.
There were times when I would wake up and say, oh my God, it was just barely going. I'd think about my wife and what she was doing, and go try to keep that fire going again. I was very worried about Blake. No telling where he was, what river he'd fallen into, what bear he'd run into. There was no way of knowing. My plan, if a grizzly came to my little campsite, was to lay down on the ground and double up. That was it. There was no other way to protect myself.
Every cell in my body, every fiber of my being was just focused on survival in that moment. I was afraid that he might still be in my home, but I knew I needed to get out if I wanted to survive. I was scared that he hadn't actually left, but I just knew I needed to get up and get out of there, even if he was still in the house. And so even though my hands were still bound, I got up and managed to get myself out of the room. And I was just terrified that I would walk out of the room and he'd still be there. And that, I would just continue to be tortured until I died. I walked out of the house and it was daylight. As I went to my neighbor's house for help, I still questioned whether or not it could be my neighbor that had attacked me. And so I kind of was thinking, am I just walking into a lion's den? There I am, mostly naked and bound and running to my neighbor's house. And just thinking that I wasn't ever gonna see my family again, that I was gonna die.
I remember sliding on my own blood, falling down to the ground. As he would take the meat cleaver and chop at my skull, my shoulders, I would fall from the impact, and I couldn't lift myself back up because I didn't have hands. So I would kind of have to crawl up the wall with my forearms. I remember looking down and I could see pieces of my hair and pieces of my skull, my skin, blood clots. And I was just looking down and I was like, my God, I'm dying, And I'm kind of knocking with, just my wrist or whatever, because my hands at this point were useless to me. I knock, and I keep knocking. I was on my way to the 7th door to knock on it when I heard the 5th door open. And it was like music to my ears. I heard the doorknob jingle, and I just turned around and I started walking towards the door. And the guy never had to say anything. He just opened the door and pulled me in. And I remember he never said anything to Robbie. Robbie just kind of turned around and walked back down the stairs. I was standing in his kitchen and I was so thirsty. He pours me a glass of water and he sets the glass in front of me. I said, I can't use my hands. Can you come pour this water in my mouth for me? As he's pouring it in my mouth, I see it come out my ear, by my ear. And I said, my face is messed up, isn't it? And he said, yes. He said, it's hanging off. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, your whole left side's hanging off and it's not connected to your lips anymore.
I had made it about 15 miles downstream. They had two very large rivers, very fast-flowing rivers, very cold rivers that I had no thoughts of trying to jump in and swim across them at the time. So I realized that I was stuck there, but I also realized that I was at the point where two rivers, which a lot of bush pilots use for navigation. My plan was to stay put and hope that someone would fly over low enough so that he would actually spot me.
I had spent that Saturday night after he left in this little shelter. And then on the next day, Sunday, I looked around and a spark had jumped out of the fire. The top of the shelter was some dead pine branches, and it caught those on fire and burned that up in the process. So then I had to make a second shelter, which I did over the side of the bank. That shelter caught fire on Monday, so I had a third place that I had to sleep Monday night, and it was lousy, and slept there Monday night and wasn't looking forward to Tuesday night.
Tuesday night, and I believe it was around 6:30 p.m., I heard the roar of a bush plane engine. He was only 100 feet or so off the river. He banked hard towards me and circled me for a while. It was obvious that he had seen me.
Tuesday evening, I had just tried to start making my bed place a little better, and I heard a plane flying over, and it was fairly close. It took him about 6 passes before he located me. So I knew then that Blake had gotten through, and so that was an emotional moment.
When I walked up to my neighbor's door, it was cracked open. And so I walked into the house, and there was this 9-year-old boy, my neighbor's son, and I just felt horrible because here I am, mostly naked and just covered in blood and completely terrified. I yelled out my neighbor's name, Robert, and he came in. And he shooed his son out of the room. He led me into his bedroom, had me sit down, wrapped blankets around me, and he was a friend, and so it was so reassuring to just hear that I was gonna be okay, that I wasn't gonna die, and that he was gonna help me. For a year after the assault, I was terrified. He had left me for dead, and I wasn't dead, and I was so scared that he was gonna come and find me and finish the job. Relief just doesn't even describe how I was feeling when I found out that he was actually caught. After more than a year of constantly watching my back, constantly scanning faces, thinking that somebody was going to come after me, not being able to sleep at night, checking every door in my house. They'd caught him. I survived because God said not yet. That wasn't the end of my story. And I continue to survive because of the relentless love of friends and family, and because there's so much to live for.
When I got in the helicopter, I looked at Blake, and he had beard and dirt all over his face. And I told him he looked like hell. And he said, "You don't look so hot yourself."
They'd actually asked us at that time if we wanted to go back up and get the raft and recover it and continue the float with one of them. Of course, we both kind of looked at it like I said, "Did you really just ask us that question?"
I survived because a bush pilot happened to be taking a couple of guys from Prudhoe Bay on a sightseeing tour one afternoon and saw Blake.
I survived because I had a reason to live. I had a wife, a child, and one on the way. And I also believe it's just part of the human instinct to want to survive.
When they lifted me in the helicopter, they told me I was gonna die. They prepared me. I mean, they started telling me, you know, like, are you an organ donor? You know, what religion are you? And I just looked at them and I said, look, I didn't just survive all this for you to tell me I'm gonna die. Like, my head kind of hurts, and can I have a pillow? I was stabbed 35 times with a meat cleaver. My left hand was chopped in half. My left elbow was chopped in half. And then my left upper arm was chopped down to the bone. My neck was chopped. My ear was chopped in half. Obviously, my face was chopped twice. I had 21 chops in my skull. I required almost 2,000 stitches and staples. The psychiatrist that examined him, she found that he was just a sociopath, like Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, and that he spent all this time building up my trust so that he could then watch in amusement as he tortured me and then killed me. I survived because I knew that I had to remain calm. I survived because I wasn't ready to die. I survived because I had 3 kids that need me. I survived because God protected me from this horrible person. He asked me how much my daughter's life meant to me and what I was willing to do to keep her alive and what I would do for him. And then he told me I was gonna have to get in the back seat now.
It was at that time that I got blasted by a big wave. Now this new sense of awareness comes over me like, Jesus, you just survived a plane crash, now you're gonna drown in the water.
I could smell the blood, I could taste it, and when I put my hand up here, my finger went right into a hole in my neck.
He had a gun. He was gonna kill my baby. He said, I'll attack your husband and I'll kill him before I come in the house and make you watch me kill your daughters. And I'll rape you all night long. We were planning a pretty big party with family and friends and kids her age, just to celebrate our first year with our new child. And when we were finished, we walked out to the parking lot. I noticed a man walking toward the store in the parking lot with an army green colored long trench coat on. And I took a double take at him because the jacket just seemed odd for the weather. I just assumed that he was homeless or down on his luck, and I dismissed it and continued to my car. So I put my baby in the car seat, strapped her in, and I backed up to close the car, and there was a man standing behind me. He was so close that when I backed up, I stepped on him. It was the same man that was wearing the trench coat in the parking lot. He was a little taller than me and kind of a little muscular build. He said, "We don't want the baby to get hurt." And he moved his trench coat a little bit, and he was holding a gun under it. He told me, "This is just about money. You don't want the baby hurt. I have no other options left. I'm not going back to jail. I'm desperate." I told him I have a couple $100 in my wallet, and he said, "No, I know a woman in a Mustang is worth more than a few $100s. You tell me the truth. I want to know how much money you have in your bank account. If you don't, this baby gets a bullet, and then I get a bullet," meaning him, and I would be left with the mess.
My wife told me she didn't want me to fly my plane. She wanted me to get a commercial flight, but it was $922 for a round-trip flight there. And I was like, well, I can fly that for $400 in fuel. And I said no, that I would be just fine, that my plane was safe and had a new engine and everything was good. I got in the air, got to 3,000 feet. Everything was fine. I was right on schedule, on course. I love flying. It's very peaceful, it's very quiet. You get to see things that very few other people get to see. I had never flown over water before. The plane don't know it's over water, but I do. You know, it's kind of scary. It wasn't but a few minutes after that I noticed a change in the pitch of the engine. As soon as something happens, you know. When the engine pitch changed, you're like, oh no. So at that point, I got on the radio and made a distress call. I told them where I was at.
I'm over the water in my engine. I'm having trouble. Could you just keep an eye on me, please? Just make sure I get to shore.
The engine never quit. It just slowed down as if you were pulling your throttle back. So I started doing some troubleshooting, but nothing was working. Everything I was trying wasn't bringing my motor back to life. I radioed Lansing one more time and said, I'm going in the drink, come get me because I don't want to die, is the last transmission I made. Now I'm 10 feet above the water. Just before I hit the water, my engine came back to full speed. But it was too late. The windshield blows in, the water just blasts through the cabin in my face.
All the girls were a little jealous because he was the older guy and he looked very sharp in a white tuxedo. And I was very proud to be on his arm that night. It was soon after prom, he had asked me to marry him. He was very caring, very loving in the beginning. It changed a couple days after we had gotten married. I got back home, it was 2 hours later than I said I would be home. And when I came through the door, he jumped up from the chair, started screaming at me at the top of his lungs. I had never seen the side of him before. He hit me so hard that my tooth went right through my lip. I ran to the bathroom crying, and I was looking at myself in the mirror. I rationalized it that he was worried about me and that he did it because he loved me. I should have been home on time, and I blamed myself. So I banged on the door, and Tim answered the door, and he had a look on his face of shock and a little bit of anger. There were two girls sitting to the left on the couch, and there was some strange guy who I had never seen before on the left side, standing there with the beer in his hand. I asked him, "What the hell are you doing? Who are these bitches here in my house? You need to get them out." I go in the bedroom and I slam the door. I could hear him out there telling them, "The party's over, you guys have to leave." I start gathering up some of my clothes. I was gonna go home. I was gonna go to my parents. My husband slammed open the door, and the guy was standing behind him. My husband lunged for me, grabbed me by my shirt, spun me around, and threw me on the bed. And he punched me so hard in the face, it felt like part of my face shattered. They got my shirt off, they got my panties off, and my husband held me down while the strange guy, who I have no clue who he was, raped me.
Everything inside me screamed, "Do not let him in your car." There was no way to get around it. He had a gun. My daughter was in the line of fire. I parked my car, and he said, "Leave the baby, leave the keys. You go in, you don't bring any attention to yourself, and you get the money and come right back out." I said, "Please don't hurt my baby. She hasn't done anything. Please just, I'll get your money. You're gonna get your money. Just don't hurt her." And he said, just get me my money. And I took the money and I walked out. Got back in the car, thrust the money at him, and said, are you ready to get out now? You ready to go? And he said he wanted to go somewhere without any cameras. We turned out of the parking lot and turned onto a residential street, and it dead-ended into a junior high school parking lot. A car pulls up a few parking spaces down in front of us. Two ladies get out. Of course, I was scared to death. I didn't want any attention brought to the car at this point. School was in session. Kids were in that school. Now, not only is it my daughter, but it's other people's. He asked me how much my daughter's life meant to me and what I was willing to do to keep her alive and what I would do for him. And then he told me I was gonna have to get in the back seat now.
The plane was straight down in the water. I went to get out of the plane. I had to reach back in and unbuckle my seatbelt, and then I swam out of the plane, though I was already underwater. When I got to the surface, just the tail was above the water. The plane wasn't all broke up, it was all one piece. I put my hand on the tail, and I said, bye, girl, and watched her fall down in the water just until I couldn't see it no more. I watched it for about 40 or 50 feet. The water's really clear, and I watched it disappear. I expected the Coast Guard helicopter within 5 minutes. I thought they'd be right over me within a few minutes. The ladder, smiling faces, it'd all be good. I remember thinking, well, at least the water's warm. It was at that time that I got blasted by a big wave. I never realized how big the waves can get on Lake Huron, or any of the Great Lakes for that matter. They had to be at least 10 feet tall, maybe a little taller than that. And every time the wave would come down, it would crash on top and would drive you under the water. So I found myself struggling just to stay on the surface to breathe. And I was kind of choking and I was coughing, and the next wave came and water went down my throat as I was taking a breath. I found myself throwing up in the water, and now this new sense of awareness comes over me like, Jesus, you just survived a plane crash, now you're gonna drown in the water.
As I was being raped, I could see into my husband's eyes, and I could see the hatred in his eyes, and I had no clue where it was coming from. I didn't recognize him at that point. It wasn't my husband anymore. Something had took him over and made him so angry. I don't know if he was tired of being married, if he felt like I was taking away his good times. I don't know. It looked like he hated me. And that scared me, because when a husband hates you, they are capable of doing anything to you. And I was petrified. I was really afraid. And I just turned my head. I couldn't even look at him at that point because of what was going on with me. I had to turn and look out the window and pretend like it wasn't happening. After the guy got off of me, I quickly just started grabbing for clothes. I was just trying to cover myself, get myself covered. And it was at that point that my husband told him, come out here with me. And they left the bedroom, and they left me there. I went to the window. I'm thinking, I'm getting out of here. I was just raped. There was a police department right up the street, and that's where I was gonna head to. And I'm trying to jerk open the window, and it wouldn't open. So I run to the other window, and I'm trying to pull up on it. And it was probably at that point that the bedroom door was kicked in. They came through the door, the bedroom light went off, and through the moonlight shining through the window, I could see that my husband had a large kitchen knife.
I hesitated. I gave a long, heavy breath. And he said, "Oh no? How much does your daughter's life mean to you?" I had been married to my husband for 16 years at that point, and the thought of this person violating me in that way was sickening in a school parking lot in front of my child. But he had a gun. He was gonna kill my baby. We only had a little bit of time before the school we were in got out, and the kids started spilling out of that school. So I got in the back seat. I asked him, "Can I cover my baby with her blanket?" It was a small thing, but it was the only thing that I could do to protect her. At least she wouldn't see. He said, "Sure." And then he sexually assaulted me, and he raped me. And when it was over, I asked if I could get dressed. While I was putting my pants on, some people pulled up, and I was so scared that they would see in the car and think that someone was having sex in their car in the school parking lot and become confrontational about that very disturbing action. They didn't notice, though, thank goodness. And so I finished getting dressed. And he said, "I know where you live. If you ever tell anybody, I will know it. If you report this to the police, I will know you did it. And I'll sneak around and I'll hide in bushes. And I'll attack your husband and I'll kill him before I come in the house and make you watch me kill your daughters. And I'll rape you all night long. And then before I finally kill you."
I was thinking, boy, you survived the plane crash and now you're gonna die in the water. So I kicked my shoes off to make my feet work as flippers a little better. It's still, my parents were dragging me down. I was having trouble kicking my feet, so I took my pants off. I was in the Navy when I was younger, and they teach you how to make a flotation device using your jeans. You tie a knot in the bottom of your pants and you blow them up like an inner tube and you hang on to them. So I did that. I was like swimming in a doggy paddle position, and I had a pant leg on each side. It was holding there, and it was working somewhat all right. The next big wave came. It rolled me, and it rolled them pants right around my neck. So now I'm about 10 feet underwater. The pants are choking me. I'm trying to swim. I'm trying to get the pants off my neck. And I remember getting back to the surface. I managed to get clear of all that. I threw the pants. I'm thinking about that was stupid. I heard a ship coming. Off to my left, a great big freighter. And the waves off that thing were bigger than the waves in the water were. And that sent me for a whirl. I could actually feel the pulse of the propeller when it went by me. It was that close to me. It came within probably like 50 or 75 feet of me, but they never saw me. I'm spooked a little bit now, you know, I'm scared and I just don't know what to do exactly. And I swam back to my pants and I took my wallet out of my pants. I took my left sock off and I stuck my wallet in my sock and I stuck them in my drawers. That way if they found my body, they'd know who I was.
I started to shake. I thought to myself, this son of a bitch is gonna kill me. And this guy was just standing there behind him. I started screaming. I told him, please let me go home. I just wanna go home. I wanna go home. I'm done with this. And he said, shut up, bitch. He lunged for my neck, grabbed my neck, threw me back down on the bed, and that's when I saw the other hand go up and the knife come down. And I grab the knife, he yanks it out of my hands, and I hear my husband tell this other guy, can't you hold the bitch? The knife came down and it hit me in the chest somewhere. I heard it hit bone, and it makes a real funny noise. It's like a donk. I just felt the whole jarring through every bone in my body at that point. They're talking to each other, grab her arm, can't you grab her other arm, hold her down. Through all this, he is stabbing me. I could smell the blood. I could taste it. And it was at that point, I really thought I was going to die. And something told me, if you play dead, if you just drop all at once onto the bed, they'll think you're dead and they'll leave you alone. And that's what I did. I dropped, closed my eyes, played dead, and it stopped. After I had dropped dead, the other guy said to my husband, boy, she was a feisty little bitch, wasn't she?
I told him I'm not gonna tell anyone. I won't tell anybody. Then he indicated that he was ready to get out. So I got out, and as I turned back around, he swatted my butt and told me he needed a kiss, and make it a good one. So I kissed him, and he backed away. I get in the car, lock the door, start to pull out, and see him standing there just a few feet from where I was parked, just standing, not moving, with this just cocky smirk on his face, watching me. The thought of running him down with my car passed through my head. He still had the gun. My daughter was still in the car, and we were still in the parking lot of a school that was in attendance. And I couldn't take my vengeance out. It wasn't the right place or way. So I got my daughter to safety. And I fell to my knees and started crying. They rushed to me, and I said, I've just been robbed and raped. And that's when we called my husband and the police. The police ran the DNA that they got from the medical exam, and they ran it through the felony DNA database. About a month after my attack, they got a hit. The detective called me, and remembering that my daughter, my baby, was celebrating her first birthday that day, he said he had a birthday present for us. And then he told me that they had him in custody. While we were waiting for the trial to start, I received a telephone call from my detective telling me that the guy who had attacked me had sent a letter out in the jails, they call it a kite, to friends that he has in LA, putting a hit out on me and my husband, asking that they killed us.
I started looking around. Well, where I'm at, I can't see land. I'm doing circles in the water, trying to figure out where I am exactly. I don't know which way to go. The sun's right overhead. I just kept swimming, mostly on my back, and paddling. I would roll over and do some hard swimming about for 2 minutes, and I would rest for 15 or 20. And I was actually following the sun. It went down over the horizon and slowly got darker and darker. I could see the lights on shore. I was close enough now I can start to see shore. I had been swimming for 4 or 5 hours. And I was swimming and swimming and swimming, but I wasn't getting anywhere. I realized then, after about 2 or 3 hours of swimming, there was a current there, and that it wasn't gonna let me get to shore. Some kind of a riptide or current was there. Frustration? Well, that's what I'm feeling now, because you've gone all this way. You almost got to shore. You're within 2 miles and you can't get to shore. I'm like, what in the world? Why? Why is there gotta be a stupid current here? I knew I couldn't get to shore now, so I started heading down the shoreline because I could see a buoy and a lighthouse just down a few miles. So I started swimming through the night. I remember the first star coming out, and I made a wish on that star. And my wish was, just let me get home to see everybody one more time. I'm not ready to die yet, not yet. Let me just make everything right. Let me just one more time, one more chance, please, one more chance.
I tried so hard not to make a noise. I was just not even breathing. Because I knew if I was still alive, he would finish me off. So I stayed as quiet as I could, and they started dragging me. I could hear my husband telling this guy, we're gonna throw her in the dumpster at the high school, right behind our house. As they're pulling me out of the house and onto the little porch, my head hit every single step. And these are cement steps. And I'm trying not to make a noise, not to make a sound, not breathe. When I came to, I'm looking up at the stars, and they had just thrown me in the bushes right up against the building of the high school. And I could see the fence line where the houses were. And I started crawling towards the fence. I felt all this wetness down the front of me. So I stuck my hand up here to check the damage. And when I put my hand up here, my finger went right into a hole in my neck. I thought, oh. So I took the shirt that I had on and started stuffing it in the hole in my neck. I looked at the fence line, and said, I can make it that far. I can make it to the fence. So I kind of just leaned over the fence and threw myself over. And I hit, and I could feel when I hit some blood gush out, and the shirt came out. So I took the shirt, stuffed it back in, and I started to crawl through the yard, and I looked over, and I saw my husband's car. I was in my own backyard.
That was terrifying. We were very scared. We were worried, obviously, for our family, but also for our neighbors. During the trial, when I testified to what he had done to me, his attorney's defense was that it was a drug deal gone bad, that I was a drug addict and had stolen $800 from my husband to pay this drug dealer off with my baby in the car, having not had enough money with the $800 for the drugs that I was needing, that I had sex with him to pay for the rest. I felt like I was being accused of being a criminal rather than the victim. People kept telling me I was a hero and that I was strong, and they didn't think they could do it. They wouldn't be able to do it. I believe good people, when they're pushed and have to, do the right thing. It was the right thing. Not a heroic thing, just the right thing. I had to ride through it to get justice.
When you're laying there in the water, it's dark. There's not a whole lot to do. Your mind's working. Your priorities change. If I get through this, I'm going to make family more priority, hopefully work less. That was a lot of what went on in my mind. That's one of the driving forces that keep you swimming. Just before the sun came up, a fishing trawler went by, and it came within 75 feet of me. I was screaming and yelling and waving, and it went right by and never saw me. I was thinking, you've got to come up with a better plan than this, because you got to have somebody see you. I don't know how much longer, how much strength you've got left to do this, but you got to figure something out. And I got my shiniest credit card out, and I thought I would reflect the sun to see one of the boats or something like that. They would come investigate what that flash was in the water. After about 4 or 5 boats had gone by, I started to lose hope a little bit that, boy, time's going by and no one's finding me. I'm ready to cry, and something's got to happen pretty soon. I don't feel my left arm, I don't feel my hands no more. I was starting to cramp and I was starting to shiver. I can see the top of a boat coming over the horizon. I was waving and screaming, nothing was happening. They're just about alongside me now. I'm waving my sock, I'm flashing my credit card, I'm screaming. Please, 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 please stop, please stop, please stop, please stop. I'm looking down, watching them go. All of a sudden the boat turned to the left. It was coming about, it come port, and it was coming around. And I'm like, oh, thank God, come on, come on, come on. So I'm waving frantically now. Well, a guy in a boat waved back to me. Well, this emotion comes over you that you're not used to either. And I started crying in the water, and they came right alongside me and threw me a life ring, and they pulled me to the back of the boat. I said, I said, hi. I said, my name's Mike. I said, my plane went down and I've been out here for a long time, I said. They responded, well, we know who you are. We kind of been looking for you, she says. And just, I can't believe how lucky I am right now. What a great day to be alive. What a great day to be found. That's all I'm thinking. I'm happy. Nothing could bother me right now.
I looked over and I saw my husband's car. I started to panic. I started to freak out. I thought, oh my God, if he sees me, he's gonna come out here and finish me off. I'm crying at the same time, trying not to make a sound. I was like a frightened animal. I hunched down and crawled, tried to make myself as small as I could to get to the other side to pound on the neighbor's house. So I crawled to the front of the house, crawled up the steps, and I started pounding on their door this way. And after a minute, I heard a man's voice come to the door and say, can I help you? It's late. And I said, please help me. I've been stabbed. You need to call the police. By this time, it's getting really hard to talk. He had asked me, who did this to you? I told him my husband. We live next door. And my priest gave me my last rites because nobody really thought that I was gonna pull through or that I was gonna make it. And in comes my mom and dad. My mom comes in first, and my mom looks at me, walks right by, turns around and looks at the nurse and said, where is she? And the nurse said, that's your daughter, ma'am. And I guess I was beat in the face so bad that my own mom didn't recognize me. When she saw me, she broke. She started screaming. She started crying. That was getting me upset because I asked the nurse for a mirror and she wouldn't give me one. I went to the jail where he was, and I wanted to see him because I wanted to know why. Why did you do this to me? And the jailer came out and said, because there's going to be court proceedings, we can't let you visit him, even though you're still his wife. After he received his sentence, he walked back from standing in front of the judge and kicked off his jail shoe and picked it up and glaring at me in the courtroom, started banging it, looking at me, coming right towards me. And the sheriffs in the courtroom just lunged for him, took him down to the ground and took him out of the courtroom. For this to happen to me, for him to do this to me, I was in shock, and I was in shock for quite a few years. I think I survived pure will, determination, and my guardian angel. I don't think I would have made it if something hadn't said in my head, drop dead, so they'll leave you alone. It was pure determination why I survived.
I had no specific bodily injury except I had ripped my muscles. When your muscles get ripped, they release this protein called CK. A normal person's level is 100 to 150. Mine was 34,000. This protein will actually clog your kidneys and make you go into kidney failure, which is a whole different ballgame. Right now, I am about 95% healed up from all the muscle damage. My CK levels are normal now. I did not pull the carburetor heater on soon enough to melt the ice. That's why when I did pull it on, and just before I hit the water, the engine came back to full speed. It was pilot error, and I just didn't recognize the problem in time. I will fly again. I will probably rent a plane or fly with friends, but as for owning a plane, I will not own a plane again. I survived this whole ordeal just staying focused on the positive and realizing that I have a lot to go home to. I have a good life, a good wife, good kids. I'm not ready to die yet, and mostly they were in my thoughts, and I just wanted to get home to all of them.
I survived because I was able to stay calm and not focus on what was happening to me, but focus on getting my baby home alive. Every 2 minutes in America, someone is sexually assaulted or raped. 15 out of 16 rapists will never do jail time for it. It is important that we give a voice to this crime and we start talking about it and getting real about it so that we can end it. Rape victims need to understand that it's not their fault. They're not to blame. They're in no way responsible. And they need to report it so that it doesn't happen to other people. Law enforcement can be trusted. Victim service agencies can be trusted. And our judicial system works. It's hard to go through it, but as a victim surviving rape, you've already been through the hardest. Nothing they can do can be harder than what you've already survived.